I'm going to try to hopefully put an end to the superstition that scientists and doctors have been saying for a while now, that the sun is bad for you, that it's going to give you cancer, it's going to make you sick. What they say is that the UV rays will go into your cells and damage the DNA or destroy the cell. But there's a reason that our skin doesn't naturally block out UV rays. It lets it in. It's because our internal systems, our internal organs, and the cells inside our body, they need UV rays. Any organism tends to evolve and adapt to its environment, everything it needs to do to survive the things that it is surrounded by. We have an olfactory sense because there's billions and trillions of particles around us, and we need to know what those particles are. They give us information. The same thing with the visible light spectrum. It's visible to us because those are the relevant colors and sources of light that we are exposed to the most. Other plants and animals have their own spectrums of light that they react and respond to. There's all kinds of air molecules, so we need a respiratory system to breathe in those air molecules and exhale the molecules that aren't good for us. Everything on this planet exists under the same politics of existence. Things like sunlight, gravity, respiration, metabolism, cellular division. The reason there's a diversity of organisms from microbes to plants and animals is because there's a million different ways to engage and interact with that polity of existence. Plants breathe in carbon dioxide and release oxygen. We breathe in oxygen and release carbon dioxide. In terms of sunlight, we're much closer to plants than the division of the kingdoms suggests. Meaning within the politics of solar energy, we have the same response or a similar kind of response as plants, which is we need it. We don't photosynthesize like plants, but we need it for our immune system, for our bones, for our brains and hormones, for metabolism, for blood pressure, for the nervous system. We need it for vitamin production and absorption and distribution. We need it to lower stress, to help with sleep cycles. If we were an organism that didn't need sunlight, we would have skin that either reacted worse to it, meaning that it's never exposed and so we have to be away from it, or we would have developed a stronger suit of armor to protect from the sunlight. Since we're not either of those, we need to be exposed to sunlight, which includes UV rays. What the sun does is its energy, it heats things up, it cooks, and it dries whatever it's shining on. Which means if you do get sunburned, it's because your body is unable to cool itself off. Your cells aren't conducting energy, and they're not moving nutrients and repairing, and they're not using water properly. When a plant gets sunlight, it draws water from its roots and rehydrates its leaves and its bark. When we get exposed to too much sun, we start to sweat. This helps to insulate our bodies. So yeah, if you're stranded in the ocean or in a desert, you're probably going to get cooked alive by the sun. If you are just walking outside for 30 minutes or doing something outside for a couple hours and you get sunburned, that is a diagnostic indication that your diet is wrong. With the right dietary conditions and hydration, you are not going to get sunburned. The biggest issue is when there's too much water in the body. There's too many liquids and fluids on the cellular level. It's bloated and swollen. All the extra energy and fluids and waste product that isn't able to be filtered by the body, that's what gets boiled by the sunlight. Because people don't let that extra energy burn off and the digestive system's always engaged, and then they block out the UV rays with sunscreen, you never get rid of that energy. The body's not going to get rid of cells that are still full of energy. They need to be used up so they can be replaced by new cells. Essentially, the fluid in your body needs to be burnt off. It needs to be used up. And the sun is a good way of doing that. Fasting is another, and of course, both of them at the same time could also be. A way you can see this for yourself in a smaller scale is get a houseplant and water it every time you eat. And you will see that the plant dies pretty much within a week. The plant becomes waterlogged. It needs to have that water used up and evaporated because the environment is too damp. And when it's too damp, the thing that likes to grow in damp environments is fungus. And that's what leads to disease and sickness, among other opportunistic organisms, but fungus is the main one. Sickness is a stage of decomposition. We obviously have a little bit more durability than a houseplant with how much we eat and how much we can tolerate, but we're essentially drowning ourselves slowly over time. Just like anything else, if you're never exposed to something, your body never learns how to deal with it, it never adapts to it. If your body never gets used to UV rays, you're going to get sunburned every time. In the same way, if you're not outside enough with plants and flowers, you're going to get seasonal allergies from the pollen. If you're always using sunscreen when you're outside, it replaces your body's own mechanisms for how to deal with the sun. So you might ask, what about cancer and sunlight? Nothing that has adapted to sunlight is going to get cancer from it. A cancer is a cell or cells that have aged beyond excess and have accumulated or hoarded a large amount of toxins and other supplies. Anything that lives that long and accumulates that much becomes obsessed over its own preservation because it has more to lose. This is why we might say of such and such billionaire that they are a cancer on societies, because they've hoarded so much and they are now obsessed with their self-preservation because they don't want to lose all that they've hoarded. The cancer cell thinks that apoptosis would release that material and the body would be unable to process or handle it. So it's taking a defensive position, but in quarantining its accumulated material, it may think that its job to protect that is worth more than the rest of the body, so it grows and spreads and tries to keep protecting itself. It becomes obsessed with its own self-preservation. The way that cancer is treated today is with radiation and chemotherapy, which destroys the immune system of the body. Most people that die from chemo or radiation therapy die from fungal infections. The logic they use is sunlight, radiation, and other toxins can cause cancer, and the way to treat cancer is to use radiation and other sorts of toxins. That's certainly one way of doing things, but we already do have a big ball of fire that kind of does all of that, and it does it in a way that also doesn't destroy your immune system, but actually helps to propagate it and helps to strengthen it. I guess the big irony of today is that this cult of science for the last few hundred years have been calling primitive and native and tribal peoples savages and uncivilized, and these superstitious people who are too scared of their own shadow because they don't understand anything. I think it was The Croods, the caveman movie, where the caveman dad was like, if you do anything out of the ordinary, out of our survival ritual, you die. That perspective or that concept is how, for the last few hundred years, science and academia have viewed humans outside of that circle of belief, the standard of science, right? Anyone primitive is what they say, anyone savage. It was that kind of belief where anything can kill you. All these natural phenomena, they were scared and superstitious of it, which hopefully goes without saying is as far from reality as you can get. But those same people are now too scared to go out into the sun without sunscreen. If you don't follow the superstitions and the guidelines of science, then there's this superstitious fear of getting a disease or a cancer. Science is a very neurotic practice, and it dysregulates the nervous system when you believe in it. If you think going out into the sun is going to give you cancer, or stepping on soil is going to make you sick, or you're going to get a pathogen from shaking someone's hand, you're going to create that in your system because you're dysregulated when you do it. You think, oh my gosh, I'm going to get sick. I just touched this other living human being and now I'm going to die. Or the sunlight is going to kill me because it's so big and scary. Breathe, regulate your nervous system, drink water, and you're going to be fine. A degree of self-confidence and fearlessness is how you get through things. Obsessing over self-preservation is not going to stop you from dying one day. Don't live in this superstitious scientific fear, and you won't be a cancer. Thanks for watching.